Mimicry is a common defensive adaptation in organisms to avoid predators, but it can also be used offensively to lure prey. These are common in insects, but not so common in vertebrates. In this video, we'll be looking into the history of an Earth-like planet called Origin, specifically at the evolution of a wolf-like animal and a sheep-like prey. Think of it like the sequel to my wolves in sheep's clothing video. 20 million years ago, there lived a caprid called Crispus. It ate the grasses and other leaves from nearby plants, and was more intelligent than it looked. It stored energy within its bright red horns, and defended itself with fire from its breath. Yeah, I'm introducing magic early in this one. If it was in a pinch, it could roast foes and eat their burnt remains. While they weren't fierce, it seems they could use the environment to their advantage to make the most of their firepower. Another animal that lived back then was a carnivore called Baphodon. They were masters at hunting the Crispus and were quite intelligent themselves. They could employ weak telekinesis and completely redirected the attacks of Crispus to attack and eat it without a problem. While they could very efficiently prey on Crispus, the latter outnumbered Baphodon by a factor of hundreds because of differences in breeding patterns. Okay, I just told you about an animal that breathes fire and another that's capable of telekinesis. I talk about elementals and magic in my other Spec Evo videos, but I haven't really explained what I mean by it. On Origin, every organism is classified under 12 magical elements. The two on the very left are what's important for this one, so if you want to pause and read the entire essay worth of information on the rest, I guess you could do that, but you don't have to. Psychic especially has the spotlight in today's video, and I even hinted at it in my last Spec Evo vid. While most agree that Dragon is the most powerful element, Psychic is always second place. I mean, it's almost synonymous with magic itself. Anyway, on to the second couple of species. 10 million years ago, the descendants of Crispus had evolved a tripod stance with their sturdy tails. They were quite a bit bigger than their ancestors, probably so they had another way to fight their carnivorous rivals than the easily deflected ranged magic. They could stand on their tails to loose powerful flaming kicks with both legs. Here's the final art. Crisfrantor is a kangaroo-like group of mammals that are actually caprids. They're really more omnivorous than strict herbivores, as they ate lots of meat that they cooked themselves. They were very intelligent and made simple tools with their two-thumbed hands. They lived in huge groups with hundreds or thousands, with 10 to 15 leaders. Their main invention was the torch, which they used to keep safe during the night. Their main predator was still around though, and only continued to evolve. They actually got smaller, so they're about the same weight as Crisfrantor, but they now work in packs and are much more intelligent. They don't have a tail and can comfortably stand on their two hind legs. They happen to look a bit like Crisfrantor, which they use to their advantage. One would stand on its hind legs and mimic the calls of an injured Crisfrantor, so when one or even a group came to investigate, they would get jumped by a pack of these carnivores. Here's the final art. Elucidon is a group of incredibly intelligent tailless carnivores with only one extant species. They use their psychic magic to appear like something they're not. Their jaws could open to an astounding 80 degrees while retaining a powerful bite. When in a pinch, they blew out the torches of Crisfrantor settlements at night and did huge damage to their populations. It's hard to know the extent of their illusory abilities, but they almost certainly weren't as powerful as the extant species today. At the very least, they could probably change the color of their coat at will to match the Crisfrantor in the area. They didn't rely on their sense of smell as much as their ancestor did, and were likely somewhere in the process of losing the wet nose. It's unclear if they were aware of the intelligence of their prey, or even if they were aware of their own intelligence. Either way, they pressured their rivals to grow even more intelligent. 2 million years ago, these animals reached the tipping point of sapient intelligence. They practiced powerful kicks that could cook their opponents and had ranged magic to hunt nearly anything in the area. However, they were not at the top of the food chain. Their habitat on the southeast of the Occidental continent converged with the sapient dragons we call Nucius, who easily outcompeted them. Here's the final art. Macrospoda was a genus of sapient Crisfrantors, and they had especially developed limbs, not just for object manipulation, but also heavy impacts. Their large horns stored energy to bake anything within a few meters, with high heat fire breath, and their eyes were developed for 3D vision and a wide periphery. They had long faces which were crammed with neurons for a powerful sense of smell. They built towns of up to 1,000 people from baked bricks and concrete, but while their walls were strong, they couldn't protect themselves from certain threats. Apart from the Nucius who would loot the macrospods whenever they met, they had a worse enemy. Another animal that got the spark of sapience, but this one was an obligate carnivore with a taste for macrospod flesh. They had a similar stance as their prey, though what looked like their tail was actually a long braid of hair from their head. Most likely, their illusory powers could make them indistinguishable from a macrospod. They could control their own hair with their psychic powers, and a group of warriors could cause a meter-thick brick wall to crumble to dust. Though the Nucius are the undisputed kings of origin, the Pseudoxians, otherwise known as Psudoxians, are arguably capable of a fair fight with the dragons one-on-one. Here's the final art. Pseudoxian is a genus of sapient elucidans that have long faces to match the macrospods, but they sense their surroundings through sight and the psychic sense. Smell isn't a big factor, and the rest of their face actually just has more space for a brain. These animals have the largest brain-to-body mass ratio on origin, along with the most complicated brains stuffed with neurons. Even their horns have evolved to store more extensions of their brain, though just at the base, meaning males and females don't have a noticeable difference in brain mass, despite differences in their horn size. Their eyesight and intelligence isn't that much better than humans, so what are all those neurons doing? Well, it seems to be mostly for psychic powers, though they're also at a significantly better at quick decision making and reflexes. They can change color at will, and can make themselves seem like something they're not. Even 2 million years ago, there was a split in cultures for this one species. One side believed that there could be harmony with the macrospods, who they called the Aspho, while the other side believed the Aspho existed to be killed. While this divide was about 50-50 for a time, population growth within the Psudoxians led the population of macrospods to decline as more were being killed than born. This culminated 2,000 years ago when the macrospods went extinct. By this time, most Psudoxians had transitioned to preying on less intelligent animals, but the ones who finished off the macrospods were forced to join the others or die of starvation. The last Aspho was slain and eaten by a historical figure and warlord called Don Kalij, who died of starvation with his closest followers soon after. The modern Psudoxian is much less hairy than the ancient ones, almost like they're evolving to resemble something else. They don't make much of their illusory power, the energy of which seems to have gone more into other sections of the brain, like being social. The major use of their illusions is with their mouth. Though it's usually invisible, Psudoxians show their mouths when they're angry or when they're eating. Because of that, it's Psudoxian etiquette that they eat alone or in some form of privacy. Most parties instead consist of attacking and killing some kind of prey animal and preparing it to eat together, after which everyone goes home with a piece of meat for themselves or their families. Here's the final art. Pseudoxian amulus is the species name for the modern Psudoxian. There's some minor sexual dimorphism, with males usually having larger horns and more muscle, while females usually have more body fat in certain areas. Standard for most mammals, especially humans. They can still change their colors, so while there's 2 natural color morphs, it's common for Psudoxians to express themselves through the colors of their hair, eyes, skin, and horns. While Psudoxians aren't particularly massive, their danger lies in their brains and the power within. They're people like anyone else and actually gained rights of personhood before the green Nucius did. There were many ancient wars between Psudoxians and Nucius, but there hasn't been one in 2,000 years. While the political stance on the Aspho genocide has historically been against said genocide, the recent appearance of Psudoxian crasimals has caused some concerning takes on it. Though royalty doesn't have a political power in Pseudosia, they do have a sort of influence. The current royal figurehead is Don Dorothy Sybil, who claims that the genocide never happened and that the Aspho never existed. It seems she and other influential Psudosians are trying to better their relations with crasimals, which is kinda scary if you're not Psudosian or crasimal. Oh yeah, if you don't know what crasimals are, check out my Sapient Predators and Sapient Prey video after this one. You'll notice some similarities. Crasimals are the predators in that situation, who are still preying on people. They also share this psychic classification. Anyway, in the last few hundred years, Psudosians had lots of importance under the Kingdom of Draconia, which is the kingdom led by the Nucius King. Along with the Rifa, a sapient insect I haven't talked about yet, Psudosians were the only non-Nucius people allowed in the king's castle. They served mostly as military advisors, as even the Nushas valued their intelligence. The current advisor to the king happens to be Psudoxian as well, Dr. Vladimir Rezkov. No one really likes him, but he's undeniably intelligent and astoundingly talented at the art of battle. Psudoxians are one of the more long-lived races in origin, the oldest of whom allegedly lived 206 years. This was in the 1800s, and Psudoxians typically live to 150. The oldest one alive today is 198, but she's probably not making it to 200. Unfortunately, death doesn't wait for round numbers. Anyway, Psudoxian culture is very aesthetics focused. Bright colors and self-expression through them are important, but any other kind of self-expression is looked down upon, even dull colors. Psudoxia is one of those tourist spots that's great to travel to, but not so great to live in, at least not if you're Psudoxian. They're easy on foreigners, but strict on each other. Well, that's about it for this video. Check out my Patreon, which you can subscribe to for just $1 a month to get your name at the end of my videos. Thanks, Captain Cobot. My next Spec Evo video will be on animal-like plants that can fly. Hope to see you then, consider subscribing, and thanks for watching.